Roll call, please.
And Chair Khan, I'd like to introduce, for those who have not met her yet, Maureen Graham, who is our new executive assistant, and she's going to be calling the roll. And she likes to go by Mo as opposed to Maureen. So
Wonderful.
This is Mo.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, Karen Kahn,
Present.
Kirk Martin, Craig Arcuri, Carl Hopkins,
Here.
Dolores Johnson, Bruce Miller,
Here.
Jim Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
Okay. The public comment section, the time at which any member of the public may address the Airport Commission on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Commission and that is not scheduled before them that same day. The total amount of time for public comment is 15 minutes, and no individual speaker may speak for more than 2 minutes. Do we have any speaker slips?
I have no speaker slips.
Okay, we will move on to the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion regarding the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion that we waive the reading and approve the minutes of the commission meeting of July 19th.
And I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we waive the reading and approve the consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Did I say it wrong? Would you like to repeat it properly?
No, go ahead. Waive the reading of the minutes. and
Waive
approve-
the reading.
and
Waive the reading of the
accept-
minutes and approve the consent calendar. Is that right?
Sure.
Got it. Okay, I think the motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to notices, that on Friday, September 15th at 5 p.m., the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at Airport Administration. Moving on to liaison reports. I see Michael T. Bennett from the City of Goleta. Do you have a report, sir?
Sure.
Wonderful.
I'll follow up on something that I spoke to, I believe it was in July, and given everybody kind of a heads up and a pre-alert. They were going to do a pretty massive paving job throughout the city of Goleta. We are essentially complete. Now we're in the process, of digging everything up after you pave it to get the manhole covers and the water covers and all that stuff exposed, and restriping the streets and so on. And then our last phase will be slurry applications on other streets, which is going to occur very shortly as well. And so that will be shutting down streets so that that can be applied. And that'll be occurring, unfortunately, during the daytime because it has to dry, and it doesn't do so well at night because things cool off. So most of the asphalt and the arterials and all took place at night, so you didn't really notice the impacts too much, although there were some because I got to hear about a few. But nonetheless, so it was successful. It was great, and we're moving on. And I don't think there's anything that I'm aware of that will be directly affecting access to the airport for the next 6 weeks or so.
Very good. Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you very much for Cathedral Oaks between Cambridge and Fairview. I think you just added 5 years to the life of my car.
Well, I think you're one of probably a couple of hundred that have said thank you. So that's well received, and thank you so much.
All right, I do not see Frank Hotchkiss, so I will assume we can.
He's absent tonight.
He's absent tonight. All right, we will move on to administrative reports. And number 6, the fiscal year 2017 P3 year-end process report.
Yes, Chair Khan, Tom Bullers, our administrative analyst, will do the presentation tonight.
Good evening, Airport Commissioners. Just going to talk a little bit about the fiscal year 2017 P3 year end. So fiscal year 17 ended on June 30th of 2017, a few months ago. And just a brief overview of the city's performance management program. We call it P3 program. It provides a lot of benefits for the city. It lets us plan and prioritize the work coming up in each year, kind of break down bigger projects maybe into more bite-sized tasks that can be accomplished in any given fiscal year. it lets us look at our efficiency and effectiveness, look at our program goals within the broader context of what the city council is trying to do. And then from a nuts and bolts perspective, we develop these each fiscal year and then monitor how we're doing on a quarterly basis. And then in sort of a feedback loop, we use that to evaluate how effective we're being and then inform the following year's P3s. I will note that the city administrator is kind of looking at the P3 program, so it might be changing for the FY19 budget. It's been in existence for roughly 15 years or so, so just trying to improve upon that. For fiscal year 17, 8 airport programs identified 60 objectives. We completed 65% of those. A few of them, 5, were not reportable. Either there was no data for it or the project was canceled for other reasons. And just to place that within context of the last few fiscal years, we accomplished 72% in those the past 3 fiscal years. So just a few major accomplishments in FY17. We conducted our FAA-required every 3-year live full-scale emergency drill. There was a lot of agencies involved in that, a lot of coordination. The University California Santa Barbara did an economic impact report for us of the airport, $200 million plus impact on the region. We signed a power purchase agreement to install some solar canopies over the long-term parking lot at the terminal. Installed a new roof at Building 122. That's where Surf Air is located right now. Did some freshening up of some paint on our center lines on some taxiways in the main runway. Did some roof repairs to one of our lift stations. It's right over here, just down the street a little bit. And then finally, we updated our leakage study of the airport's catchment area, and that's really useful when Hazel goes to talk to airlines and try and pitch new routes. We didn't complete a few objectives, just a few of those. We've had some vacancies in our security group, and that meant that we missed some of our objectives related to that, not enough people to hit some of those patrol points. We've also had a few project delays for the airport master plan. We had to recirculate the EIR based upon some comments. The development at 6100 Hollister has been appealed by the city of Goleta. And building 333, that building, our initial project, the bids came in a little higher than we anticipated, so we modified the scope a little bit and rebid the project. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
Yes. What is the status of the solar project?
I signed, Commissioner Hopkins, I signed the master application today, and I understand that the solar contractor will be submitting his plans to the Community Development Department of the city for the review of the project on October 9. So hopefully, I'm sure it won't be complete. I can't imagine any project going through DART's complete the first time. But we have met with the solar company and kind of gone through what's required for the submittal. And hopefully that will go smoothly, and we'll see. I can't imagine that it would be ready before construction before next spring, as a minimum. Yeah,
Thank you.
but it is moving forward.
Great. Any further questions? Okay, thank you for your report. And that brings us to item 7, the fiscal year 2017 fourth quarter financial report.
And Tom will do this report as well.
Good evening again. Fiscal year 2017, again, ended June 30th, so this is the period from July 1st of 2016 to June 30, 2017. So just a few key indicators that impact our budget. Passengers were up almost 10% versus fiscal year 2016. We've seen a lot of upgauging, which feeds into that increased landing weight that we've seen on the commercial airline side. We've also seen some increased landing weights in general aviation. And parking revenues are up 12% versus the previous fiscal year. So our monthly passenger traffic, this is sort of a different way than we usually look at our passenger traffic, but the last 5 fiscal years, month to month, you can see FY17 is pulling even with FY13, FY14 in a lot of months. Again, we lost American Eagle and Frontier Airlines, and so you see that dip kind of in the FY15, 16 years, but coming back up to some previous year levels. Total operations on the airfield, you can see the last 4 fiscal years, that's been remarkably steady. In FY17, we saw a pretty big decline in local operations. So that's typically one of the big contributors of that is a flight school. And 2 of the flight schools here on the field, one went out of business and one has discontinued some operations. So we think that's probably why we saw that dip in local operations. Fuel sales, this is a good chart to show kind of the relationship of avgas and jet fuel. You can see avgas here is really steady across the whole period, but is really just a very small percentage of our overall fuel sales compared to jet fuel and jet fuel for our commercial air carriers. And you can see the jet fuel has just steadily gone up a little bit each year.
I'm a little curious about that graph. Maybe it's just the granularity, but with, I think it was 8,000 less operations, presumably GA flight training, that the avgas would be, would not have declined. So that would suggest it's growing from other.
It's declined very slightly. It's kind of hard to see on this. Yeah.
Okay.
So just a few revenue highlights at the end of the 4th quarter, so that's the whole fiscal year. We've seen some increased airline landing weights and the associated fees. Some of our terminal revenues versus budget, we've seen parking up and the rental cars down, but they've essentially evened each other out. And then we've seen some increases in our TSA law enforcement officer reimbursement, and that's just a timing issue from when we collected it from the previous fiscal year. So just to orient you a little bit to this slide, on the left-hand side, commercial industrial leases are revenues from our commercial industrial area. Terminal leases are rental cars, parking, and terminal concessions. Non-commercial aviation is non-commercial airline aviation, so GA, generally speaking. Commercial aviation is our commercial airline aviation, so revenues from the terminal, landing fees, fuel sales. And you can see that makes up, those 4 categories make up the bulk of our airport revenues. We get a little bit for investment income. Miscellaneous is mostly TSA reimbursements and some badging revenues. And then there's this big operating transfer in, and that was reimbursing the operating fund after we sold 6100 Hollister to Direct Relief. The operating fund had made some expenditures for the design of the 6100 Hollister project prior to the sale. So just to point out where some of those revenue items occurred, we've seen the increased landing fees in GA and the commercial airlines. Here's the parking and rental cars sort of coming out even, essentially coming out at budget. And then the TSA LEO reimbursement exceeding budget a little bit. So the overall takeaway from that is we're about $200,000 over budget to the good on the revenue side. In terms of expenditures, At year end, we saved roughly $1 million, and it's roughly split between salaries and benefits, about half of that. And then in our material supplies and services, we saved roughly $500,000. And then if you take half again, we had some miscellaneous savings throughout our budget and utility savings. And then we had a grant match for our Runway 725 project budgeted in FY17. Those appropriations didn't actually happen until council meeting last week, so it looks like a savings, but we're spending it this year instead of in FY17. You'll actually hear more about that project coming up later this meeting. So again, just looking at where some of those highlights occur, vacancy savings, $450,000. And this is where our grant match and utilities savings show up here in the material supplies and services. I'll note material supplies and services includes our allocated costs that we pay to other city departments, our finance department, our city attorney, and also our contracted service with ARF and Public Works for engineers. Again, we saved about $1 million. So the overall, when you put those two together, about $1.2 million. And our revised budget, we had a budget at about a $680,000 deficit. With those savings, the revenues coming in a little above, we wound up with a surplus of $567,000. I will note the disclaimer here that this is not final numbers yet until the city audit's completed, but we think that's about roughly where the year end is going to fall. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions?
I think looking at the bottom line, where revenue exceeded expenses by $567,000 is very comfortable. That's 3.2%, and I believe staff should be commended for keeping us on the positive side of that line. Thank you.
Well, I'll echo that, but I'd also express a little bit of a concern. I noticed in the details of the P3 report that a significant number of the areas that we didn't make were in security. And I also noticed that a significant portion of our savings, salary savings, was in security. And I think this has been the case for several years running. I'm sure that the airport staff is doing everything they can to address this, but I would certainly, it's too bad our councilman from the city isn't here. I would certainly hope that the city management and council is impressed upon the fact that while it's good to have a surplus, it's not good to have it in security. And that hopefully at the city level, they can work with the airport to address that so that we can maintain closer to a full security. And although that may cost us some money, I think in the long run that's a good idea.
Yeah, on that topic, historically it's been difficult to fill those positions. And at one time we had I guess there was a training program, and I guess that maybe that's no longer part of how you're able to address the issue. But yeah, what if anything is going on to try to make it easier to fill these positions?
First, finding qualified applicants. What we're finding generally that we're not getting applicants that have the school, the post academy. So right now we have one individual that's going through post at Lompoc. We have another individual going through the background and the psych and the medical, and if they're cleared, then they too would have to go to full academy. So we're doing that. We're looking at retired officers to come in and fill on a part-time basis. And we don't want to jeopardize their retirement system, but there is occasions where they could work for 12 to 18 months on a part-time basis to assist us. So we've gone to academies, we've gone to career fairs, we've gone to the military. We've reached out to just about anybody that would be interested. So we are working on it. We continue to work on it. But it's tough to find someone who can get through all of the hurdles that you have to do in order to be a law enforcement position.
How many equivalent positions are we using in overtime these days?
Right now we have 6 positions filled in patrol, full-time. And we have 2 working, as I said, in academy and other training. So they're working overtime generally every payday, and have been. Remember 2 years, Christmas this year, it'll be 2 years, where we had 2 retirements. And since that time, we have been down 3 to 4 positions in patrol for the last 2 years.
Well, in a typical pay period, how many hours of overtime would there be?
Oh, Commissioner Wilson, without checking, I'd hate to guess. I just know that they all work overtime.
Yeah.
Whether it's a shift or, if someone is ill and they come in, they cover. And keep in mind that with TSA regulations, we have to be at the checkpoint in order for TSA to screen. And if they're not there, then we're shut down. So it's a critical position for the airport. And I just admire the patrol officers and Fernando, our supervisor. I mean, they do everything they can to keep the airport in compliance with TSA regulations, short-staffed as they are.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say it's a matter of the people just aren't there, or is it a salary issue? Are we not paying enough to attract people to this job?
The biggest difference between patrol officers at the airport and police officers, I mean, there are a lot of differences, but one is that our officers are not part of the safety retirement. They're part of the general retirement. I think that's an issue. I think housing cost is a big issue, and I think just the culture of the world these days, and police officers in particular, I think it's hard to find qualified individuals. And I think PD downtown's had that issue as well. So it's not just us. And I know the sheriff's office has been low on staffing. So it's just a hard job to fill.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you so much for your presentation. Moving on to item 8, the construction of the Santa Barbara Airport Main Runway Pavement Rehabilitation Project.
This is presented tonight by Leif Reynolds, our project engineer. This is a major project for the airport, and we've got some positive news here, some successes, and Leif's going to tell you about it.
Thank you, Hazel. Good afternoon, evening, airport commissioners. I am here to tell you about the Runway 725 Rehabilitation Project. So we will get started. As engineers, we like to show you everything in plan and elevation, so that's what I'll start with. Plan view, overall, the project is very comprehensive in that we're going to grind and overlay, remark, and regroove the entire Runway 725. So it's a big project. It's pretty much contained to the main runway and the fillets that go right off that into the associated taxiways. Of course, there's the elevation view. I put this photo in because you can see in the center line the crack or the groove. It's filled with black crack filler, but generally after a period of time, we find about 10 years, the pavement lanes that are out there, even though they're crack sealed, start to separate. And when those start to separate, that's when you get pavement failure. And so we're experiencing that now, and so that's why this project came up on our list about 3 years ago as a consideration, and that's when we got started on it. General information, the runway, I think as you all know, 6,052 feet in length by 150 feet in width. That's over 1 million square feet of asphalt concrete, including paved shoulders and blast pads. It takes about 15,000 tons of asphalt to construct a 3-inch overlay out there. Brief history of our pavement maintenance. In 1992, there was an overlay of the runway and an addition of a porous friction course. Then in 2006, that porous friction course was removed, and we did another overlay, and we grooved the surface of the runway. And then in 2008, we did our runway shift project to the west, 800 feet, and that created the runway in its current configuration. The current project is covered by Airport Improvement Program grant funds. This project was identified in 2015 as an eligible project, but the estimated cost exceeded the airport's entitlement dollars. So at this point, I'd like to ask you if you know what the airport's annual entitlement dollars are.
We assume it was not enough in 2015 to cover the cost of the project.
That's correct. But do we have another guess versus a question?
2 million.
This guy knows here. In 2016, our entitlement was 2.2 million. In 17, it was 2.4 million. And that's a formula that the FAA derives. They have a formula that they derive from our enplanement at the terminal. So the more passengers we have, the more our entitlement goes up. But for those 2 years combined, and with our airport match of 9.34%, our total amount was $5,157,000. That still did not meet the cost of the project. I'm showing the scope of work here, and I know these are kind of hard to see. I don't even know if the pointer, I can direct you very well, but once we started the design, we went out there and we did some cores on the main runway. This core shows this first 2.5 inches here. That's the overlay we put in 2006. And then if you go further down the core to this area right here, you see what looks to be like the core has split in half, and in fact that's exactly what happened. This area from here to here comprises the 1992 overlay. Now, I wasn't here in 1992, but Hazel was, of course, and for those of you who were around Goleta, you know that we had a flood in 1992. So as it turns out, we were right in the middle of our runway rehab project. We had put the base course on the runway, and then it flooded. And so when we flood in Goleta, we get this fine layer of silt on everything. So that was covered on the runway. It was removed with sweepers and to the best of our ability, and then the surface course was put on. But as a result, at some time between 1992 and the present, that course of pavement delaminated. And that's a problem for stability, as well as it's a problem for our project, and I'll show you why. Before that, though, this slide here, what we did here is we took a core right through the center of one of those pavement lane cracks, and it's kind of hard to see, but the crack, what we wanted to know is where does the crack stop? And you can see this is the 2.5 inches, and then it actually stopped right at the delamination. So what we found was maybe the delamination was a good thing after all, because the surface cracking didn't go past that. So we found that information in the design, and we wanted to know, how many inches of pavement do we put on this runway? Well, when you remove pavement from the city of Goleta Street or our runway, you do it with one of these grinding machines on the left. And they're a big machine. They're somewhat precise. They can get to within a 1/2 inch or so, but we wanted to remove the top 3 inches of pavement because that was our former 2006 overlay. The problem is just what's shown on the right. If you do that, and if you have a small section of pavement between the grind and the former pavement course, you have a very unstable surface. And this was actually a photo of this exact thing that happened in front of the terminal in our 2014 pavement project. We ground the asphalt and we found we were left with about an inch of pavement which I could kick up with my shoe. And if you pave over that, you're going to have a failing pavement course probably within a year or two. So what we decided to do is to grind down 5 inches, and what that will do is it will get us through our 2006 overlay just past the delamination layer on the runway. And putting that 5 inches back will get us a really good section of our new runway. So the cost of that, $7,748,000. Our entitlements, $5,157,000. We bid that in May. We went to the FAA and we requested and received $2.3 million in discretionary funding from the FAA to complete the entire project in one phase. We bid it in a way that we could do the second phase next year, but that would just be more impacts to the airport, and the FAA was responsive to our request and funded the entire project. So with that, I like to say thank you to the FAA. I say that every opportunity I have, including tomorrow when they come up and meet with us on next year's projects. So our schedule, we actually opened bids on I think April the 20th this year, but the FAA's discretionary process is such that we had to wait until August to find out if they had discretionary funding. What that did is it postponed this project from occurring basically starting now and into the fall to the springtime, because we cannot pave in the wintertime because it's too cold out there. It's all at night. So on April the 8th, we plan to close the airport at 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. We are doing that April 8th through May 25th. That will get all of the new pavement down. Then we have a curing period on the new pavement for 2 weeks in which you cannot groove new pavement because it's not stable enough. Then on June the 10th, we'll come back. This closure will start at midnight and only go till 6 a.m. And we'll have grooving machines out there, and we'll apply the finish markings to the field. So we'll have 2 separate closures in the spring and summer. With that, is there any questions?
Well, I must say that in my years on the commission, it's certainly the most thorough exploration of pavements that we've had. Thank you very much. I was kind of curious, what are the implications of not having the pavement grooved for that period while it's curing?
Yeah, the implications are that it's simply not, the friction coefficient does not meet FAA standard. However, it is acceptable to have it like that while you're doing an overlay project. It's allowed for in the advisory circular, and it's recognized that they make you wait to do it. So it is acceptable. We wait the minimum amount of time, and in fact, what will likely happen is it's a many night and shift process to pave the runway. So what we hope will happen is as soon as we finish paving the far end, we can come right back in and start grooving the first end. We just awarded the contract, I think, as Tom said, on September the 12th, so we don't even have our contract in place, but that's what we'll try to work for once we get our contractor on board.
I should mention that the grooving has a lot to do with removing water on the runway, and we should be so lucky as to have some.
Well, this is in April through June, so we'll probably be all right.
Yeah. Any other?
So that also means that for that several week period, there will basically not be center lines and distance markers and things like that, the various white markers on the pavement?
No, we're required to apply first course markings, which are the same markings you see out there today. They will not have glass beads in them, but they will be the exact same markings, and then all markings on the airfield are 2 courses. Second course is with glass beads. So we put the first course on. Sometimes those will somewhat bleed through the pavement, and that's why they make you wait 30 days before first course and second course. So every shift will be putting markings down.
Okay. And you said the airport will be closed, the entire airport, or will the 15 runway still be available at least some of the time?
The airport will be closed to fixed wing operations.
Okay?
And we can't keep the 1.5, so, well, 1.5 left, of course, because it's not lit, but 1.5 right because we're paving right over it.
Okay?
Anything else? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
And that brings us to item 9, the Santa Barbara Airport Lemon Festival participation.
We participated in Deanna's going to tell you just how much we participated this year.
Do we get
Oh,
some
I'm sorry.
lemons?
Here we go.
I want some lemons.
All right, good evening, airport commissioners. Let's see here. I probably can't click on that from here if you have. Awesome. All right, we have visuals. Good evening, airport commissioners. Yes, the Goleta Lemon Festival is not even a distant memory at this point. It was just this past weekend. And we had a wonderful time, just for starters. I know Mr. Bennett was there, we saw you. And we had a number of airport staff working as well. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what we did there. So first of all, I should say that the airport has been a sponsor of the Goleta Lemon Festival for quite some time, but we haven't participated to this extent in the past. We've had banners and different things. But this time we showed up in force, shall we say, and we really worked to make some good connections with the participants that were at the festival. Now, 40,000 participants is an unaudited number, but it's the number that we're going with because that's the official number. And like I said, the great thing about our participation there is that we got to interact with people. And of course, we're establishing the airport as part of the community and as a supporter of the community. So we got a lot of mentions, media mentions at the event. We got some stage time. We could talk about the airport. And of course, there's nothing better than being right under the flight path if you're participating in an event, because you have talking points going over you all the time. So what took place here? Well, the main part of our participation was that we had a booth, and we had a big booth. And we featured some of our props that we use from the tour center, our tower, our hangar, Little Spirit, if you've seen Little Spirit, a little plane that kids can get on. We co-located with Isla Vista Elementary, which is our adopt-a-school. We distributed a lot of materials about the airport, both historical information about the aviation history in Santa Barbara, but also sort of practical information about what flights, what carriers, how much parking costs, and all the stuff you need to know to use the airport. At a festival, of course, there's lots of families, so we gave away the little propeller whirligigs, lots of them. We gave away little wings that the kids could pin on themselves, and of course airport pencils. We know that we gave away 5,000 pencils because we ran out of pencils. We ran out of wings, and we gave away a lot of wings. And the whirligigs, we ordered a lot of them, so we'll have some more for future festivals, but they were really, really popular. The other great thing that we did is that we worked to draw people to our booth. And how do you draw people to your booth? You offer them something free. Well, more than a pencil. You offer them the chance to win some airline tickets. So that's what we did. And the next slide, we offered tickets on United Airlines, and at the same time offered information about all of our airlines, our destinations and our frequencies, and we talked a lot about aviation, even general aviation as well. And one of the best things about this, just the interaction with people, and Hazel knows this as well, is just talking to people. We got a lot of feedback about where people would like to see commercial service. I mean, there's nothing more than better than having someone come up to you and say, we really need service too. And that sort of inspires us in the work that we do with the air carriers, that we are in touch with the community and know what they're looking for. So here is some photos of our booth. And when it comes to the airline tickets, I'll tell you, we made them work for it a little bit. One of the things that we wanted to do is we really wanted to promote the fact that we have these larger aircraft now. So one of the ways we did that was with this contest to win the tickets, you had to identify on an entry form which planes fly into SBA. Now, we helped them with their answers. This was educational, but we got time to sort of interact with them and help them get the right answer. You really can't see from this distance right here, but there was only one plane that did not fly to SBA, and that was the Airbus 380. And you'd be surprised how hard that was for some people to figure out, but we helped them along. But all the other aircraft, it gives a great opportunity to talk about the 737s coming in, the A320s, really talk about these aircraft for folks that just don't have a concept of what kind of capacity we have these days. So you see lots of happy people and happy employees. We had a blast, honestly. There's Little Spirit. There's Hazel waving at the booth. Okay, and so the United Airlines contest, which you filled out the form, had to answer the questions right. This is the thing that's just amazing to us. We had 1,099 entries for those tickets. We actually couldn't fit them all in that one bin there that I had, so we had to put them in a box. And on the right there, you see Tracy Lincoln, our former operations manager, who is still involved with the festival. He actually drew the winner for us. And so the tickets were 2 round trips on from Santa Barbara to either Dallas, Los Angeles, or San Francisco. Not Dallas, Denver. Excuse me, we get a bit confused. It's a D word. So Denver, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. And we emailed the winner. We have not heard from the winner yet, so we're hoping that that person actually wants the tickets. All right, so lessons learned. Besides just having a great time, we learned a lot of things. We learned that as a sponsor of the Kids Zone, we could make that more visible at the event. We want to try to update some of our information materials that we can hand out. Do more media. In addition to what the Goleta Lemon Festival already does for media promotion, we can do more of it. And we can also do more social media promotion. And in this particular instance, we didn't have an air carrier with us, and we think that would be a great addition to that if we could have that. So at this point, if you have any questions.
Any questions?
Looks like a great event.
Yeah, it was great.
Looks like you did a wonderful job. Thank you all. Great promotion for the airport.
Yeah.
You left out the pie contest.
Yes, there was a lemon meringue pie eating contest, and I tried on a new role for the first in my life. I was a judge of the pie contest, so to watch folks bury their faces in pies and then judge who won based on how much they ate. So it was a lot of fun. It's a great festival, great participation. I think it was probably one of the best that's been. Alrighty, so we're going to go right into the next one.
Great, which is item 10, the Alaska
Yes.
Airlines social media
Yes.
promotion.
More promotional things here. So, Alaska Airlines. This ties really well into the theme of promotions, and I should say that at the Lemon Festival, when we had our sort of stage time, we were able to time it to when we had aircraft flying overhead. It was really nice. So one of those opportunities when we were up there plugging our tickets and our participation, we had the Alaska Airlines 737 fly overhead, and it was pretty amazing to see people look up and see a really big, beautiful plane. So Alaska started, as you know, mainline service on the 737 in August. They've served Santa Barbara for quite some time, since 2003, but this is a larger aircraft. They're flying both 737 and 700s and 800s, and it really depends on the bookings that they're having. And these days, it's been mostly the 800 that's been coming in, and it's been very, very full. So, and adding an additional 83 seats a day, and they're filling those seats, is really great. And one of the things that Alaska did that was very smart to support this was they had a fare sale, and we were able to promote that. Of course, you could get a ticket, a one-way ticket for about $100, a little bit more than $100. So that was obviously very helpful. And Alaska donated 2 tickets for us to make something of the new service and try to promote it. So of course we did that, jumped at that opportunity. So first of all, we did a media campaign. We issued a media release and sort of worked the traditional news media, and we got a lot of publicity. Most people seem to have seen it. And when we went back and calculated the value of the media coverage that we got based on if you would have purchased that as advertising, the total ad value was almost $16,000. So it's great value for the effort that we put into it. The other piece of it, really the news media piece, the purpose of that was to promote what we were doing on social media. So social media was where we actually had the promotion where you could win 2 tickets. And so this was heavily promoted both on Instagram and Facebook. We did put a little bit of money behind it, as you do on Facebook, to promote, but not much. A little more than $1,000 gets you a long way. And you can see there that thousands and thousands and thousands of people were reached by it. We had more than 2,000 entries and hundreds of people liking our airport page, spreading the news about the contest, and just a lot of really great positive comments that people make on Facebook about the airport and about Alaska. And we did choose a winner. She's a resident of Santa Maria, very happy to win some tickets, and we're going to be getting those to her just as soon as we can. So what we learned from this is that we can focus more on news media than I think we have done in the past, because obviously it paid off. We got a lot of good coverage. And we found too that news media, we need to educate them a little bit more about what's going on at the airport, and that's part of that effort. Social media works, obviously, to engage people. We saw all kinds of evidence of that. And what we really are focused on now is creating that consistent, planned social media effort so we're always present in some form or fashion. And of course, we found that the digital advertising is extremely is effective and not expensive. We just noticed, of course, that it reaches a lot of people. You get a lot of feedback from people, and it costs comparatively very little. So we get a lot of mileage for what we're doing. So any other comments, thoughts?
Any questions?
Anybody who entered by chance? We had people ask at the Lemon Festival if there had been a winner drawn on the Alaska ticket, so.
Good crossover.
Yeah.
Great.
I do have a comment on Alaska's service. My wife and I went to Seattle a few weeks ago, and after we'd purchased the tickets, she found that it would be appropriate if we changed the return date by 1 day. So she called it Alaska, and they said, "Oh yes, we can do that. It's $100 and some odd." And my wife said, "Yes, we'll go ahead and change." And the customer service agent asked, "Why do you want to make the change?" And she said, "Well, my son who lives in Bangkok is going to be in Goleta for 1 day, and I'd like to see him." And they said, "We will waive the fee," which we thought was very nice. Well, of course, coming back a day earlier, the seats were $45 more expensive, but they did really go out of their way. So.
Yep. Well, Alaska
Very
certainly.
pleased with Alaska's service.
Yeah.
And the 800s are a nice airplane.
Yes. Yes, they
Full,
are.
I mean, completely full on the way to Seattle. A substantial number of empty seats on the way back, but I think
Right.
that the world goes that way.
All right.
Let me ask, when do we get, or are we likely to get our second flight to Seattle back that we lost with the big airplane?
That's why we have the big airplane, just because of availability of aircraft. When we were told earlier, I guess late spring, that the second Seattle flight would not be coming back this summer, then we suggested, well, if you can't do that, what about just putting in a mainline service? And they had mainline service available. It didn't come until the end of August, but we do have it, and with these loads going out of Santa Barbara, I have a feeling that we'll continue to keep it. And it provides basically very close to the same number of seats that we would have with 2 flights. So we still have Portland and now the mainline service on Seattle.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work on this. We're delighted to have. How long has it been since we've had a 737 at Santa Barbara?
Probably 9/11, when United pulled out right after 9/11. That's when we lost the big guys.
So
Yeah.
16 years. Great.
Yep.
And that brings us to the director's report.
The director, really, there's not much more to just tell you about. I did want to, though, just to brag just a little bit more about our passenger traffic. It's still up 5.6% or 5.8 this time, and 8.7% year to date. So We continue to try to fill those seats and work on air service daily as one of our items that we do. So with that, I will answer any questions that you might have, but we've covered financials and we've covered marketing. Property is, believe it or not, you haven't seen many leases recently, but that's not because we don't have activity going on. Deanna and Tracy will be coming next month, I think, with some new programs and new agreements. So with that,
Tracy?
I'm sorry, we do have a new Tracy.
We do, okay.
Tracy Fouch
Good.
is our new property
Welcome.
Supervisor, and she joined us 2 months ago. Has it been 2 months yet? 6 weeks. Is that it? So we just have new folks everywhere.
And we
Great.
couldn't be without a Tracy on
Excellent.
staff.
That's
Excellent.
right. We had 2 at one time. Tracy 1, Tracy 2. So
I do have one question. The status of the 53 Cass Place, which got flooded, which is the, I believe, where Easy Lift was, and
Yes.
maybe somebody else.
yes,
I noticed that it's still listed as, water damaged.
We're making some improvements to the building, not just restoring it from the flood, but also going in and doing an upgrade on the restroom and a break room for Easy Lift. And those, we had to do plans and specs and get a building permit, of course, for that. And we have the permit, and it's under construction now, and I anticipate maybe within the next month it'll be completed and signed off on. And then at that point, Easy Lift will reoccupy that facility.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I had one question on the director's report summary of the financial summary. It makes a statement that in the second sentence, preliminary expenditures were 11.8% below budget, with encumbrances expenditures 21.3% above budget, which would suggest encumbrances were 32% above budget. And I couldn't quite line that up with the other material we got.
Deer in the headlights, right?
Okay, well,
where's Tom when I need him?
He left.
Oh, well, okay.
He left.
He left.
We'll get back to you, Commissioner.
That's just a
Any other
flipped digit or something.
questions, comments? If not, we are adjourned.
Thank you.